Hello friends and fellow bakers, it's Chef Tom from ChefInstructorTom.com. Welcome back to the channel. Thanks for checking in. I do appreciate it. We haven't made any yeast doughs in a long while, and today we're going to change that. We're going to make some pizza dough. You may have seen it on my Instagram feed, Chef Instructor Tom, of course. And I have one of those uni pizza ovens. You probably saw that as well. Now I want to tell you, it is so much fun to use. I'll be showing you how it works in the upcoming weeks. One of the things it needs is good dough to feed it. Well, I'm just a baker for that job. I feel pretty confident with all the doughs. I like making Neapolitan style the best. It's pretty high hydration. It does take some practice to use. I'll show you some dough and then show you a simple pizza you can make in your home oven. You don't need an uni. Soon we'll go outside and make some pizza in the uni. But today, let's just go to the kitchen for right now. So let's get our mise en place ready. We're going to be using 00 flour today. This is a King Arthur product. Gotta say I really like it. I always bought the Caputos brand, but I had to drive a ways for it, which I don't want to do. It's a little more expensive. And I have to say the flavor on the King Arthur product is awesome. So this is available in my local grocery store. You can also get it online very easily as well. I'm also using the SAF instant yeast. This is pretty standard across the board for most pizza doughs these days. And you put it right in the flour. It's not a big deal. For the kosher salt, I'm of course using Morton kosher salt. In your area, you might find Diamond kosher salt. And they vary a little bit in crystal size, but and they say saltiness. I've never seen the difference personally myself. I use them interchangeably, but on the internet, they'll tell you there's a lot of big difference. So we'll see what happens. I'm happy with the ingredients I'm using here. Just using, of course, regular tap water. We are starting with 600 grams of the 00 flour, 390 grams of water. We're doing 1.5% of instant yeast. So that's 9 grams of instant yeast and 12 grams of salt for 2% in our salt. And that'll give you enough for 1,000 grams, just a little over 1,000 grams, which will give you 4 250-gram dough balls, which is perfect. And that is, it's good for me and the wife. If you want to double that or doing a 1.5% or whatever you want to do, it's up to you. But I find that 4 dough balls will last me a good long while for just the two of us. So let's mix up this dough. Let's get this stuff out of the way. And we will mix our dough with just a spatula. That's all you need. Stainless steel bowl, rubber spatula, that's all you ever need. I've got my tap water, and I'm going to put that in a second, but I'm going to put my yeast and salt in and combine those and kind of disperse them throughout the flour a little bit. Make it easier to get the yeast working quicker. And once the yeast starts getting wetted up, that's when the activation starts, and that's really all you need. We'll put all the water in at once, and we'll mix gently, trying not to slop over the side of the bowl. And this first initial mixing, it might get kind of stiff. It might take a little bit of extra work on your part. We'll put that to the side so I don't knock that over. But just start wetting up the dough. And you've seen me do this many, many times. With a 65% dough, it's a relatively stiff dough when you start. And we're going to let it rest for an hour after we have it mixed up. That first hour is the hydration period. That's really going to make a big, big difference in our final dough. Too many times we want to mix this dough really quickly and have it done. Well, we're going to go a little slower on this one. And maybe you don't have as much time. If you don't have as much time, you can go a little faster. You can use warmer water. I'm just using cold tap water right now. But you could use warmer water to speed up the yeast. You could also increase the yeast itself too. Now I'm using 1.5% today, but what if you use 2% or 2.5%? Well, that's going to speed up the process too. It does affect your flavor a little bit. I would say adversely. I'm not a fan. But if you need pizza right now, then go for it. Do it. And then knead a little bit. Now you don't have to knead it really hard. If you're using a mixer, just a quick mix in the mixer is fine. But I tend to go in the bowl. It's just easier in the bowl. And that way I can really feel how the dough is coming together. It's feeling really good now. And that's all you have to do is just get it to this point. That's all you need to do. Get it kind of raggedy, and then you can take your towel and cover it up with your towel. and you leave it for an hour. So it's an hour later, and we're going to do our first stretch and fold on this dough. And it's not really risen that much at all. It might have risen a little bit, but not much. Key thing, and we've talked about this before, and this is a key element when you're working with dough, is to wet your hands. And I know at first blanch, you go, wait a minute, wet hands, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I have wet hands if I want something not to stick? Well, that water makes it easy to handle the dough. As you can see, my hands are not sticking because they're wet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch this out, and you'll see also something else. This dough is completely hydrated now, and it's easy to stretch. You've got a good feel for the dough. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch it out, and I'm going to fold it in thirds. I'm going to fold it in thirds again until we get this kind of ball like that. And I'm going to round it a little bit. And I can feel that the dough is getting a little sticky. A little bit more water in my hands. Don't worry, you won't ruin the dough. This goes back in your bowl, and then the cover goes on. And we're going to let it sit for 20 minutes or so. And if it goes a little longer, that's okay too. But the idea is we're going to give it about a 20-minute rest. Then we're going to come back and do this 2 more times. This will be our second turn. And we're going to stretch and fold again. And again, we're going to want to have wet fingers to get the dough out. And you see it's starting to really get a little bit of gas built up inside. And this really takes the place of your fermentation time. It really is going to be pretty much ready to go once we have this stretched out and folded 3 times. We do it just like before. Fold it in thirds, then fold it in thirds again, and then round it a little bit, and it goes right back in the bowl. Towel goes on top. 1 more stretch and fold to go. So this will be our third and final stretch and fold. 3 of 3, as they say. And we're going to stretch this, and you'll feel that the dough is getting pretty strong now. Strong enough to make a pizza, obviously, and hold its shape. And you can really feel the gluten development there. Still fold it in thirds, just like we did before. And fold it in thirds again. Now this is going to be too strong, though, to fold into pizzas at this point. But once we give it some rest, maybe about 20 minutes rest or so, could be shorter, it's going to be able to be cut up into 250-gram pizzas. And then we are going to put it in our container like this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're going to ferment that overnight. So we're going to cut these up into 250-gram pieces. And now that it's rested a bit, it's going to be easier to round as well. You can still put a little water in your hands to get it out of the bowl. And you don't really want to work it too much, because if you work it too much, then it's going to be very stiff and hard to round. So we're going to turn our scale on here. And you could just cut these into 4 pieces, I suppose. But you know me, I like to be accurate. 250 grams, and that way everybody gets the same size pizza. I think of these as kind of individual pizzas. There might be a little bit left over, but 250 grams is good for 1 person's pizza. And we're just about there. Perfect. There we go. Excellent. So now what you want to do is you want to round this. And because this is a really high gluten flour, but so soft, it rounds so nicely. So what I did was I just rounded it in my hands like that. I'm going to round a little bit on the bench, and it should grip the bench a bit, as we do with all our other yeast doughs. We'll set that one aside. You can also, if you feel that's too big for your hands, that's a possibility. You can always use both hands and just drag it towards you like so. You hear that little squeaking sound, that's the gas that's being built up. And you see the big difference between these 2 doughs. This one's not been rounded, and this one's been rounded. This is all ready to go, and this one needs some rounding. And what we're doing there is just stretching that gluten over the top so that it has somewhere to grow overnight. Now, could you do these in one day? You sure could. So right now it's about 10 o'clock in the morning. If I were to make these for tonight's dinner, they'd be fine. I would leave them in the refrigerator for about 6 hours, and then I get them out and leave them out at room temperature for a while, and then they're going to be ready to make pizzas with. But I'll show you more about that in the next segment. Now we've got all 4 pieces rounded here. I want to put them in my container, and I got these containers. This is just a Ziploc container, 2 for $5 at my grocery store, and this is going to go in the refrigerator overnight for fermentation. So the dough has been in the refrigerator overnight, and you'll see something that looks a little like this, if I can get the top off there. The dough has well fermented overnight. Now, these look like they're, oh my God, how are we going to separate them out? They're pretty well portioned out as it is. You can just grab like so, and then re-round them, just like so, just like you did before. And then we'll set these aside. You can round them just like that. And you're going to want to round these before you start making any pizza. We still have a few hours before we can make pizza. So you're going to want to plan ahead. So if you're making pizza at 5 o'clock, get these out at 2 o'clock, okay? And all you're going to do is just leave them at room temperature. And depending on how many balls you need, maybe if you're only going to make a couple pizzas, then just get out 2. If you want all 4, get all 4. But see how easily they separate? They'll separate pretty easily. So you'll round these guys, and this will set you up for making a nice round pizza later on. Now, if I tried to roll this out right now, it's too strong. And so what's going to happen is it's not going to roll out. It's too cold. It needs some time to relax, and that's why we're going to let it sit for 3 hours before we roll them out. Or I should say even stretch them out. That's more to the point. So we're just rounding these guys. And then they can go right back in the container, just like they were before. Like so. Top goes on, and we set them aside, and then poof, it's now 3 hours later. So, I know, movie magic, right? So these guys are nice and relaxed. They've been sitting for 3 hours, and they did kind of, I would consider this a little overproof, but there's so much yeast in this, it does not matter. You're going to be fine. These guys will last for at least 3 days just in the fridge on their own. So you don't have to worry about that at all. So we're ready to make a pizza now. Just take one of the rounds, and you might need a little bit of flour in your hands too. It looks like they're still pretty sticky. You can flour that up a little bit before you take it out of the container there. And then try not to stretch it like I'm doing. Try not to stretch it too much. Just leave it be. Just leave it some, some gas in there. That's fine. And cover the rest of them up. And unfortunately, we're going to make pizza inside today. I know. I still want to go outside, but you can't see it. But it's raining right out there. And so I've turned the oven on to 550. And I've got my stone up pretty high in the oven. So we're going to bake them off on the stone today. Still going to be tasty. So a little bit of flour on top, a little bit of flour on the bench, and now we can start to press this out. And you can see that gas is really nice. And even though this is it's 65% water, it's a relatively wet dough, and kind of medium, I would say maybe. It's going to stretch really nicely because of that soft 00 flour. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a good stretch along the edges. I'm just kind of stretching this out here. Try not to get a hole in it, because if you get a hole in it, then you may have some trouble. Now again, professional pizza guys, I am not one of those professional pizza guys, can probably do this a lot faster than I can. But this is a good start. We're not going to get a huge pie out of this. Remember, this is an individual pie. This is good for about one person. Or maybe one person and another person who doesn't eat that much. So we're still stretching. And what we're trying to do there is just stretch out that rim so that way we can get a really nice thin crust all the way around. If you find a thin spot, oh, there's a hole in there, we can fix that. If you find a thin spot, give it an extra stretch right there. And you'll see how it starts to get a little bit bigger as it goes along. I'm going to give you another little insurance policy, let's say. But if you do get a hole like right there, we'll just kind of gather that up and we'll give it some more stretch. Like I said, this dough is pretty doggone strong. Once you get it out to about what you want, this is maybe about 10 inches in diameter. You could just do the pizza just on the bench like this, or if you felt like you were not really ready for that kind of pizza, maybe you would want to put it on a piece of paper, and that is doable too. And that you can give it a little bit more stretch on the paper too. So don't worry, it won't burn in the oven. This is just good. I use the Reynolds brand parchment paper, and we're going to put this right in the oven, right on the stone. Don't worry, it won't burn. I do it all the time. Let's give it one more stretch just to be on the safe side. See if you can't get that guy a little bit thinner. Because if it's too thick, what happens is then it's kind of doughy in that one spot, and it's not so good. So I would say that looks pretty doggone good now. That looks awesome. Now we got some pizza sauce. You can just use your own pizza sauce recipe, or if you want to use canned pizza sauce, you can do that too. I just use my own. I just use whole tomatoes, and I just kind of grind them up. They're really tasty. A little bit of oregano, salt and pepper, garlic, plenty of garlic, a little bit of basil. Just give it a little sauce there. Don't overdo it on the sauce, and leave yourself maybe about a ½ an inch all the way around. Now I'm going to make a pepperoni pizza today. I'm going to put down a little bit of cheese first, just a plain low moisture mozzarella. And I don't overdo it on the cheese. I know a lot of people love a lot of cheese. This is only about maybe 2 or 3 ounces of cheese. You could go more if you wanted to, but again, if you want a good crispy thin pizza, this is the way to go. Don't overdo it. And then we'll put the pepperonis on top. And again, don't overdo it on that too. I know I say don't overdo it a lot, don't I? But I really feel like sometimes we go too much, you know? Let's just hold back a little bit, and then if we want another one, we can always make another one. And we got one more pepperoni in there. That looks beautiful. And then it's already in the paper. You could use a sheet pan, a cutting board, a small cutting board. You could even use, if you have a pizza pan like this, you could put it on. You could put it up underneath like that if you wanted to. Slide it in that way. But I do want to show you this. So this is a peel, P-E-E-L, from Uni. And I use this on the pizza oven. So I'm going to use that to put it in my oven. Let's put it in the oven now, and we're going to bake it for just about maybe 10 minutes or so. Okay, it's been 8 minutes. Oh man, look at that pizza. Is that beautiful or what? Look at that. Just gorgeous. And I like a little char there. Don't lose the pizza, Tom. And what you can do is slide it right on there. Yes, the paper does get a little bit, let's call it a char. But I would say that is a beautiful looking pizza. And we're going to go ahead and put this on the cutting board over here. And we can just, and I want to show you this too. Look at the bottom crust. The bottom crust is pretty well browned. Not bad for a home oven, I would say. I'm going to cut right through that guy. Oh man, feel that crispy crust. You hear that crunch? That's what you want to hear. Now I would probably go with a pizza size, that size myself, but I'll be polite. Let's cut it into 8 pieces there. Let's be optimistic. Now, could I eat the whole thing? Probably. But look at that pizza. Just gorgeous. And look at the edge. Oh, look at the edge crust there. Nice and wide open, but super crispy, and it'll hold its shape. That is a beautiful looking pizza. Nice thin crust. Ow. Now, I sure wish I could share this with you. You'll have to go vicariously, but look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Just right up against there. That's beautiful. All right, let's have a taste. Great crust. Nice golden brown in the bottom. Baked all the way through. And I did it in a 550 oven. But I put the stone up high in the oven. And I left it in there for about an hour, heating up, the stone heating up. It makes a big difference. So that's your pizza. As you can see, you can make great pizza in your home oven. You don't need any special equipment. Well, I would recommend getting a stone if you have not already. They're available at your kitchen store, anywhere, or even online. They're really easy to get. But the key to making the really good pizza is to get the stone really hot before you bake the pizza, and to put it up on a high rack. You saw how close to the top of the oven I had it. That makes a big difference because this will give you a great leopard spotted bottom crust and still brown the top of the pizza. For the dough, taking the time to stretch and fold 3 times will give you a beautiful textured dough. And remember, you want to get the dough balls out a few hours before you make your pizzas. I know it's a lot of waiting time, it's a lot to remember, but if you practice and experiment in your own kitchen, you're going to be well on your way to making the pizza you always wanted. Have a great week. Happy baking.